Oh, I'm Derek.
I'm Colby. If you are listening here, thank you so much for joining us on this new leg of our continuing journey from independence to working with great people to back to independence. It's been fun, but thank you for joining us and following us to our new home.
Yes, we talk comics sometimes. If you're new to the channel,
Yep.
Sometimes we talk about X-Men comics. In fact, almost all the time we talk about X-Men comics.
Yeah, so to start things off on this new channel, this new feed, we already have Respawn here, of course, but to reintroduce not only ourselves and our interests, but also give you guys a listen. That's just a fun, quick listen that you don't have to worry about whatever's going on in the news, whatever's going on in the politic world, anything else. It's a good time to look at our favorite 5 X-Men events, because for fuck's sake, there are so many X-Men events, especially from the 90s.
There are, and a few years ago, probably closing in on a decade ago, I actually made it like my life's goal to catalog all what at the time were I considered the 20 X-Men crossover events. My list has changed slightly, of course, since that time. And honestly, I've got one on my list that breaks my own rules as to what I consider an X-Men event. Now, Colby, I don't know what you consider an X-Men crossover event, but for me, two main things. One, the event has to go through Uncanny X-Men, because Uncanny X-Men was the more or less spine of the X-Men comics. You can't have a crossover without the main title. I'm almost positive there's one on your list that is going to break that rule, though, and that's okay, because I know you that well. The other one is, for me, a crossover really meant that it had to proceed issue to issue in some kind of logical reading order. It didn't necessarily have to say part 1, part 2, part 3 on the cover, but we all know what order you need to read Extinction Agenda in. My rule breaker breaks that rule, because it is an X-Men story that I love so deeply and so tremendously. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, again, if you're just joining us, you should know that whenever we do a list episode, we are going to have some honorable mentions. We can't help it. We are told to stick to 5. We can't fucking do it. It's impossible.
Yeah, I have an honorable mention to my honorable mentions list, because to me, this does not count, but I have seen people count it because it is not a traditional event, although it was a big event in the X-Men universe, and it was one that we've talked about before that was shockingly good. And it had a lot of spin-offs that did go into all the series, but the series itself was self-contained. So this is where I don't know where this book fits, and it goes to kind of your rules, where X-Men events have always played very fast and very loose with what's an event and what is kind of mediated out as an event.
Right.
So one that was definitely treated as a major moment in X-Men, wasn't necessarily meant to be a crossover event, but because it happened in our glorious modern era where you have to have 45, one-shots and spin-offs, Death of Wolverine was treated like it was the event that year.
Fair. Yeah, that's a good pick.
I will always say that book should not have been as good as it was.
It was way too entertaining. Charles Soule is one of my kind of favorite go-to, just player writers.
Yeah.
Like he's a solid mid-list writer. He's never turned in something that I absolutely abhorred. I will say I'm not a fan of his Daredevil run, start to finish. I think it had some issues, but I think he's a really capable writer. And then, holy God, 4 issues of Stephen Niven art. You can't sneeze at that.
No, yeah, and it was one of those things where I saw, just looking up personal opinions on people's favorite events, I saw it being in and out of it. And again, it's not the traditional event outside of it. Did affect it affected the writing of the X-Men honestly, in weird ways for a very long time. And because
it reflects an event that is actually in my top 5 in that way, and we'll get there momentarily.
Very nice. There's that one. Another one I'm going to mention really quick, just because I even admit it's not good. However, it was at a point in comics where I had just gotten back into reading weeklies, and really, I say gotten back in, but it was the first time I really had read weeklies for a long period of time. And because of that, Avengers vs. X-Men, for as stupid as it was in parts, it was still just, for me, a dumb fun read to this day.
I remember, because we were working together at Hastings when that was coming out, and I remember I had more or less dropped out of X-Men entirely at that time. I was in and out on Wolverine and the X-Men. I was really enjoying Uncanny X-Force, but for the most part, I was very angry at Marvel for canceling and relaunching Uncanny X-Men with a new #1, and was unhappy with the direction Kieran Gillen was taking the book. So I was pretty much away from the X-Men at that point. But I remember you were constantly, you were like, you were having a good time. You really enjoyed that one.
It's a roller coaster. It starts off really strong. It gets really shitty. They don't necessarily know what to do with Hope, and they make her the most important character, and then they kind of take that away from her, and at the very end try to give it back to her. It's weird. I do appreciate they tried something new with the Phoenix Force at that time, splitting it up into the 5. It was fresh, giving some really interesting takes on those characters, how the Phoenix would affect them. It was an interesting story. It definitely didn't land, and it didn't work for everybody. But it also, for some reason, has become this weird evergreen title that just perpetually gets mentioned by people and has stood out, even though it's not even the first Avengers vs. X-Men story. The one from the 80s.
Not even close.
There's one I want to say I can't remember what year, but somewhere in the 80s that one of the original ones that people actually fondly remember, the people who do remember.
It was, I want to say Claremont wrote, because it was very much involved with Magneto. If it wasn't Claremont, I apologize. But I do know that it was heavily involved with the rehabilitation of Magneto and whether or not that was something the Avengers could countenance. I do want to say I can kind of actually play off what you're saying about Avengers versus X-Men for one of my honorable mentions, which is, again, it is a bad story, but it was also one of those stories that happened when I was just really seriously getting into collecting comics, and I feel like the final issue, the resolution issue of the story, is still spectacular and memorable, and that's Onslaught.
Yeah.
Onslaught is a goddamn mess, and I love it.
Onslaught's on my honorable mentions, too, because it is not great. It has so many flaws. However, it has that badass aesthetic of the Onslaught character combination of Professor X and Magneto that is just visually looks like a big fucking deal. He looks like he is going to fuck up everything in the X-Men universe, making it feel like it was super important from the very beginning. That first
year-long build-up was spectacular. The reveal in X-Men number 54 was shocking. And like I said, all the heroes resolutely facing death and dying to stop this force was really incredible to me. It led to one of my all-time favorite issues of X-Men, Uncanny number, oh god, I always forget this part, 322, I want to say, was the aftermath of Onslaught, where everybody just kind of wakes up and goes and sits down to the breakfast table and is just like, holy shit, everybody's dead and it's all our fault. It's a terrible event that I love and have a lot of fond memories for. My second honorable mention is Hoxpox, House of X Powers of 10. It's too new to give it anything but an honorable mention, but I love those goddamn issues. All 12 of them. I am a fan.
Yeah, that's kind of right now give this a little bit of a date. We're recording this right when X of Swords is coming out. I will say, the way X of Swords is going, it would have probably ended up on my list. However, even though it's going by really fast and we're already nearing 10 issues in. We're already getting close to the halfway point of this series, which is crazy. And so far, I've enjoyed every issue. But yeah, I don't feel right putting an event that's not done with, because even though I trust Hickman, it's the World of X-Men, this could take the weirdest turn in 2 issues and become utter, bizarro, weird crap.
Absolutely. And then my final honorable mention, dude, I am so close to just saying I have a tie for my number 5, because my honorable mention is right there, just a cock hair away from being my number 5 as well. And it's very similar to my number 5. It's a story from the 90s. It's a gigantic mess. It was brand new creators on the book trying to live up to Claremont's legacy and just immediately throwing everything at the wall. My final honorable mention is Executioner's Song.
Ooh, that'll come up on my list.
Oh, fantastic. I don't want to talk too much more about it then, because that was the one that I didn't like when it was coming out, but having gone back and reread it, it's a fucking ride, and I really appreciate it for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that, apparently, in a minute. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and roll right into my number 5.
Go ahead.
Also a 90s event, also maybe a little too grimdark, did some things that some of the writers felt maybe a little too much at the time. I still think it is genuinely impactful, genuinely moving. My number 5 is Fatal Attractions.
Ooh, so yeah, that is very good. That's, I mean, one of the most iconic ones, and of course, that's some of the most iconic imagery.
Oh, absolutely. That for those of you who don't know what that is the return of Magneto to the X universe. Colossus, who has recently lost his sister Lyanna to the legacy virus, decides that Xavier's dream no longer means anything to him, and he joins Magneto's acolytes. And in an attack on the station, Asteroid M, Xavier wipes Magneto's mind after Magneto pulls the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, which very nearly kills him, leads to a tremendous issue of Wolverine in Wolverine number 75, where he basically fights for his life and dies. It also leads to the revelation of Wolverine's bone claws, and to me, does something that at the time was heretical. It removed Wolverine from the X-Men comics for like 5 years, at least 2 before he came back.
It also, and this doesn't matter anymore, it's kind of like the Obi-Wan was a clone theory and fought clones forever ago of Star Wars before the prequels. Similar, before Origins and everything. One of the fan theories at the time that has always intrigued me, I almost wish was true, that you can see back at, like, I've heard several people who were, and you will know much more about this, one of the fan theories I've heard a lot from people that grew up then was that they all thought, a lot of them thought that it wasn't that Wolverine's claws were bone underneath. It was because his body trusts a hill. It was his body trying to mimic the adamantium claws he once had.
See, actually, I didn't hear a lot of that. A lot of what I were like, oh, so the adamantium covered claws as well. Fascinating. Oh. That adds a whole new dimension to the claws. But I really like that theory. I wish I had heard it because that's really cool.
Yeah, I heard a few people mention that. It came up on Twitter not that long ago, and I've heard it once or twice from a cousin who read comics at the time. I was like, that's actually not a bad. That would be an interesting angle had they followed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't, so it's just a what if scenario in the real world.
But yeah, again, it's a very 90s. I mean, every single cover had a hologram on it. They were all cardstock covers, but every issue did advance the story in a really interesting way. Project Wide Awake over in X Factor brought the Sentinels back. X-Force brought Rusty and Skids back after the Executioner song. Of course, like I said, Wolverine's adamantium being ripped out, Xavier mind-wiping Magneto, setting up Onslaught, the Wolverine death issue, the Excalibur issue is in there. It's a tremendous crossover. I love it so much. It's stuck with me ever since I read it when I was 13, 14 years old. And it is absolutely, I would consider one of the single best X-Men stories for sure.
No, I can agree with that. I think, especially quality-wise, when you're talking about just pure greatness on this list, because, again, this is our favorite, so there's going to be highly mixed opinions on quality of some of these books.
Right.
Especially, I think, probably my list, because there are certain types of X stories you will quickly see the pattern, you already know, Derek, that I love, that will be appearing on this list, so I'm glad that you're going to be probably counterbalancing in a lot of ways. Because
I hope so, because I definitely treated it more as a best of, but being the hardcore X-Men nerd I am, my best of is also my favorites, so it wasn't that hard.
I'll dive into my type list, because this is clearly not going to be on most people's best of. However, there was one of 2 stories that when I was younger and first getting into comics, I would, or one of 3 actually, but I would pretty much just buy whatever comic I wanted, exclusively based on the cover, and if they had one of my 5 favorite characters at the time on the cover. And one that had a lot of that on there was Apocalypse of 12.
Oh, wow. Okay. Before you say anything, I have to say I don't hate the 12. I would, on the scale of bad to good, I would put the 12 right in the fucking middle. It
is, yeah. It's hard for me to read this one without just, I fucking love Apocalypse, and I fucking love the weird prophecy stuff. For those who don't know, Apocalypse 12 there was a lot of buildup of, throughout X-Men comics for a few years, was this
It was introduced in 1988.
Yeah.
It was introduced 12 years before the resolution of the story.
There's this weird, vague idea that there are 12 mutants that'll either be able to end Apocalypse or empower him or bring a mutant kind to a new chapter. It was clear they had no fucking clue what this whole thing introduced, like you said, in the very close to Apocalypse's origin, if not the very early stuff of him being mentioned even and him being seen.
Right. Well, the thing about Claremont was he would drop hints to subplots that he could later play around with.
Yeah.
And that was one of the subplots that he dropped, and then 2-3 years later, he was permanently off the X books. So he didn't really have a chance to do anything with it.
Yeah, and this was also, again, this is that time in the 90s. The 90s is this great time where you had this crossover between the comics, the show, the world of the X-Men blowing up bigger and bigger. So they were always about, okay, what will sell us toys? What will sell? What could we move to the show? What did the show do that would work here? And this is a weird, like, cross-pollination of a lot of different things that shouldn't work and honestly don't always work. Because, again, you have this weird, vague prophecy that has been mentioned for over a decade at this point. You have the X-Men popular in several different franchises, so it's clearly, okay, what 12 are going to be in here? Who should be it? What should they do? Because I guarantee you, if you read this at the beginning, I don't think they knew where it was going to go. I think at the beginning they weren't sure what the 12 were going to really mean in the end.
Right. Well, also, one of the big hints to the 12 was supposed to be Franklin Richards.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, I can't remember, but for whatever reason, Franklin Richards was completely unavailable. And there's some nice fan theories as to why that is why Apocalypse ended up using Nate Gray, because it was a similar reality-altering power.
Let me see. Okay, I'm going to try to remember the 12. See if I can remember off the top of my head, because I probably can't. But Bishop was there.
Uh-huh.
Iceman.
Yeah, because he's an Omega-level mutant.
Cable and Cyclops, those are easy.
Right.
Magneto, Phoenix, Professor X, Polaris. Oh, the Storm.
I was going to say Storm, because Storm and Iceman represented the elements. Magneto and Polaris were alternate poles.
Sunfire
Bishop was the Xavier. No, I don't think Sunfire was in there.
I think he is.
You know who was in there that you're gonna forget because it's fucking ridiculous? The Living Monolith.
Living Monolith and the Russian dude.
Oh, with Peter's brother?
Rasputin. Yeah, Rasputin.
Okay, yeah.
Mikhail, yeah, there you go. I think Sunfire, I want to say, because I don't know who else it would have been.
You may be right. And then Nate Gray taking the place of Franklin Richards.
Nate Gray being involved. Then you also, but then mention all the, so those are 12, but to be a 90s event, you also had Master Mold involved, Trask involved, Rachel Summers was involved, the Skrulls were involved.
The new Apocalypse Death.
Yeah, Generation X, Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You had, like, a million different fucking characters here. You had Chris Claremont, Alan Davis, Fabian Nacia. You had, who was on art?
Claremont was not involved in that one. That was primarily I think he
Alan
did.
Davis. Didn't he do like I thought he did something.
Maybe he did like an issue.
Well, I think
but it was
he did
primarily
something.
Alan Davis.
Yeah, because Alan Davis.
Say, though, Rob Liefeld came back for Cable because Rob Liefeld wrote and drew Cable number 75 to tie into that.
I'm gonna have to look this. I was cheating. I was trying not to look it up, but I think Apocalypse. I think Chris Claremont did he did an issue, or he may have even done like an outline or some bullshit like that. Because I think I remember his name being on something.
That's fair. While you're looking that up, I'm going to go ahead and put in my my one major complaint.
Oh yeah, go ahead. There's a few you can
pick. I actually was not minding the 12 as a story. Like you said, it was epic. It was crazy. What the fuck are the Skrulls doing here? Oh my God, Apocalypse set all this up ages ago. This is actually just a plan by him, a plot. Holy shit, Rob Liefeld is drawing the Cable versus Apocalypse battle. Oh man. And then Cyclops decides to sacrifice himself the same way Jean did on the moon back in Uncanny number 137 and throw himself in the beam instead of Nate Gray so the Apocalypse would be absorbed into his body, not into the powerful Nate Gray's body. And instead of getting any kind of resolution, we then move into the Ages of Apocalypse, which was a bunch of goddamn pointless alternate reality issues that really didn't do anything. And then after that, Cyclops is dead. He died off panel. Meh.
No, that's fair.
No resolution to the main climax. It drove me insane, and the fact that Cyclops is my favorite X-Man also was just like, way to send him out like a bitch, guys.
So
fuck you.
He was uncredited, but wrote X-Men. Which one is it? X-Men 96? He was uncredited, and Alan Davis did the plot. but he did the script for it.
Oh, son of a bitch. Okay, wow, you have checkmated me on X-Men trivia, sir. I doffed my cap to you.
Well, this is, again, if it's Apocalypse or Cable are the only two characters or maybe X-Man, I have a chance.
Right.
I have a small, weird chance in those three characters.
And I'm working on beating you at your X-Man game because I am currently on issue 43 of the X-Men series. I am reading my way through it, sir.
No, it's not bad. There's some shit. There's some fun.
X-Men number 25, honestly, makes my top 100 X-Men stories. Yeah. That is a true statement. I am working on a list of the 100 greatest X-Men stories. Ooh. X-Men number 25 is in the 90s.
I'll take it.
It is on that list. Because his confrontation with Madeline in that issue and finally learning what the hell's going on with Matty Pryor is fan-fucking-tastic. I tip my hat to Terry Cavano, who is not a good comic writer. Nope. He turned in an epic story with that.
Well, don't worry. We will talk plenty of X-Men in this episode. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Apocalypse of 12, it is very 90s. It is very dumb. But there's a lot of fun to be had. It's almost like the old school take on like a Justice League book. More bang for your buck. If you want every X-Men villain and character from the late 80s to mid 90s in one book, you'll probably get it here.
Yep. Yeah. So. It's like I said, 90% of it is actually a really solid read. I personally have a problem with the ending, and even then I can't say that makes it a bad book.
My last thing I'll say about this, I still think Chris Claremont was pissed on it, because if you go back and read, what was it called? That one where the end? It uses so many of the same ideas from the 12. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's his way of like, I'm going to try to redo this and make sure people don't think it's the exact same and kind of change it. Because so much of that, if you go back and read those two, it is shockingly similar.
I used to have a graphic novel that included all 18 issues of X-Men The End, and I wish I still had it, because that's another comic that's a fucking bonkers book. It is insane.
Going back to my childhood way of buying comics, a lot of covers had Sinister on it, so it made my list back in the day. Like, I think I have multiple copies of like the director's cut, the normal version, all that stuff, just because Sinister on the cover, I'll buy it.
Nice. So moving on from the story that ended the 90s and opened the 2000s, the X-Men story that I feel like embodies the early aughts in a lot of ways, the way comics were kind of rethinking, redesigning, post 9/11, but still superhero comics, unlike the Ultimate Comics, which, oh my god, someday we're going to have a talk about how the Ultimate Comics are like the ultimate post 9/11 comics.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about my number 4 on this list, Messiah Complex.
I love Messiah Complex. We'll talk a lot about that later.
It's so good. Do I need to hold off so that we can talk about it a little bit later?
No, we can, because it will be mentioned. I'll be honest, I combined it with its brothers and sisters. So
okay, so you're going for the ultimate arc.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the first of the 3. Okay. Yeah.
So good.
There is something, like I said, it's very post 9/11. It's very this trying to reset the status quo of the X-Men. It's trying to mature and age up the characters, and also it's in the middle of them dealing with the post House of M story, where supposedly there's only 198 mutants, even though that's clearly farcical. Yeah. It has so many moments in it that I just really adore and treasure. Cyclops finally standing up to Charles Xavier and being like, you don't lead this team anymore. You haven't in a while. Yep. You're an old man, and this is my team. It has been. Cyclops sanctioning a undercover Wetworks X-Force from Wolverine, and it obviously being something they've discussed for a while, because Cyclops is like, get X-Force ready, and Wolverine's like, you got it, boss.
Yeah.
The stuff with Jamie Madrox going into the future and meeting the adult, oh god, what is her name? She knows stuff.
Oh.
From House of M.
Oh,
I keep trying to say Lila Cheney, and that's just not it. Layla Miller.
Yeah, I bring too much Exosaurs, and I was like, it's not that one. It's not fucking Terra.
Right.
I know that.
Bishop's heel turn, which I'm actually kind of bummed that it ended up getting reversed, because I felt like his heel turn was really well earned in the story.
Yeah.
The ultimate kind of nihilistic conclusion of Charles Xavier is shot and left for dead, even though it's kind of interesting that his body immediately disappears from panel. And that's because he had to go off and do his Mike Carey written X-Men Legends series, which was great. I feel like everything about Messiah Complex really does fire on all cylinders for the story that it's trying to tell. Yep. Not the least of which is it introduced one of your all-time favorite characters.
I was about to say, don't leave my girl Hope out of this now. She would play a bigger part in the next few, but such a key role and such a fun role, and
also set up. I've talked about it before. I'd never really connected with Cable as a character until he became a father.
Oh, yeah. No,
and to me, Cable is Marvel's Superman in that they both work so much better now that they are father figures. And Marvel immediately fucked their own ass on that one by killing Dad Cable and putting Kid Cable in his place. I don't hate Kid Cable, but I do feel like they left a tremendous amount of story potential on the table for no immediately apparent reason.
I will never fully understand the fact that for anyone who hasn't read it, I will always praise the Zach Thompson, Lonnie Nadler Cable run that ended with that great Hope issue after Cable died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it is. That is one of the best, if not honestly the best pure quality Cable run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were really hitting. I'm
Too bad it's only 6 issues because god damn, they nailed it.
6 issues in an annual, and that's it.
Yep.
And not even really an annual. So again, I can't remember what
it was. Special. It was the Extermination,
Hope
Aftermath Fallout special, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, something.
It's good comics.
Yeah, it's great. Highly recommend those for sure. And I'm hoping that Hickman, the fact that it's been revealed that old Cable is still alive, doing something, which I guess
doing something, yeah.
I guess, but that's where Cable gets. It's very Doctor Who-y, where he's a time traveler, so technically old Cable's always alive.
Mm-hmm.
However you want to look at it. Either way, this is definitely what set him. This is the turn from him going from just badass Terminator ripoff to actually becoming a fully fledged character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad. I'm very happy to see that one. Yeah, no, we'll talk more about that universe relatively soon.
Awesome.
But to talk about a universe you love, my next one we hinted at the beginning is Executioner Song.
Hooray! Yeah. So I'm just gonna go on my rant real quick.
Oh.
So Claremont had left the books, and it was kind of a sudden thing. And then very shortly thereafter, the people who were supposed to take the mantle, Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and Wes Portacio, went off and formed Image. So the X books were fucked. They had no direction, no idea. They were spiraling. They brought in Fabian Nicieza, Scott Lobdell, Peter David was doing X Factor already, and Nicieza and Lobdell particularly were like, fuck it, let's go for broke. And they pulled out Apocalypse. They pulled out Sinister. They tried to do the resolution of the Strife Cable storyline.
Yep.
They put everything in this fucking kitchen sink of a story. It's a mess. It is fucking beautiful. Jay Lee, Andy Kubert, Greg Capullo. It's bug nuts. I fucking love it. It was so close to being my number 5. You have no idea. Please tell me why you love it so much, sir.
Very similar. It is, even though it's not the best event from the 90s and it's not the highest rated one on my list, because there's one I love a lot more than it, it is still, to me, the most 90s X-Men event in every way. It is... this and the 12, to me, are so similar, at least as far as, like you mentioned, that kitchen sink mentality of we are throwing everything and everyone you want in this book. They're going to have it. Every weird thing we've been doing is going to be here. We're going to try to cover this up. It is very almost similar in a lot of ways to what Endgame would become the movie-wise, because it is like bringing every desperate part together that you've been reading for years and years and years. It is this culmination of literally hundreds of random desperate issues, bringing them together in a way that tenuously works, but honestly is so loose you can definitely find some holes.
It holds together by spit and baling wire, and that's okay.
It's so fun. It is, again, is that definition of just, hey, turn your brain off for a minute, read some fun comics. Yeah. It's not going to win, the best written event. It's not going to win the most original story. However, it is just, it's like Fast and Furious. It may be dumb, but you know what? Even though it's
You're having a good time.
Yeah, it may not be as well written or well executed as other things. However, it's pretty and it is fun.
There is a moment in one of the last 3 issues, I couldn't tell you which one, it was an issue of X-Men because Andy Kubert drew it, but Wolverine literally says that his ribs were shattered by a blast from Barrage on the moon, and the X-Men editorial staff spent months after that comic came out trying to explain away how Wolverine's adamantium ribs could have been shattered. It was kind of hilarious to see. Also, minor bit of trivia, you may or may not know, during the story process building Executioner Song, Peter David popped off because he was kind of appalled. He was by the amount of like crazy shit they were throwing in. So he popped off as a joke, and then Magneto rips out Wolverine's skeleton. Which led 2 years later to an event we've already talked about. So, yeah, Executioner Song is directly responsible for Fatal Attractions. Another reason I love it so much.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It is. Yeah, there's not a lot to say about it without just repeating myself there. It's very similar to 12 for the reasons I love it. It's fun. It's dumb, but it also is that core. What is X-Men? It's got that core Games of Thrones in space feeling to it.
Absolutely. And if we ever get to a con where Greg Capullo's at again, he is signing my goddamn Executioner Song hardcover collection 100%. I tried to get it at the last con he was at, and that just didn't happen. It's happening, motherfucker. I'm going to do it.
I don't blame. I mean, now that I have Batman and Spawn stuff and an Angela sketch from him, I feel like I've got to start moving on to some lesser known stuff. So I feel like that's got to be up there.
You got to do pull the weird shit out, man.
Oh, yeah.
So my number 3, how you feel like taking a trip back in time? You want to hop in the Wayback Machine with me? Let's get in the Wayback Machine to a time before crossovers were really even a thing. In fact, they didn't really have a name for it. The whole reason this list exists is because Chris Claremont decided there were too many mutants for a minority, for an oppressed minority. There are just too many goddamn mutants running around. He decided that he needed to kill a few off, but his editor at the time, Louis Simonson, was like, you can't just do that in Uncanny X-Men. That's too big a story. We need to have that happen in other books, which is how we got my number 3 pick, The Mutant Massacre.
Ooh, see, that is, and yeah, you are definitely going for a high caliber. You're gonna get the good shit on this list. Yeah, no, that is. There are definitely a few, and I won't go into too much detail, but there's Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants, and a few others were very close to being on my list because quality wise, I don't think there's an argument that they deserve to be on because they, like you said, the core of the X-Men, like Executioner Song may have been that core fun X-Men. This is the core heart of the X-Men of, like you said, the oppressed minority that's always going to face insurmountable odds and always be hated for what they are.
Where the X-Men lose.
Yeah.
And they lose hard. This is the introduction of Sabretooth, who promptly thrashes Wolverine. Colossus is stuck in his metal form and paralyzed. Kitty is stuck in her phasing form and can't unphase. She's literally turning into a ghost because she can't eat or drink. Nightcrawler comes out of this in a fucking coma. The X-Men are beaten in this story.
I want to say, I cannot remember who ever pointed this out to me, and it was during the Ant-Man and Wasp movie about ghosts out like phasing, where she couldn't control her phasing. And ever someone pointed out to me, I can't unsee it, and it kind of pisses me off because, like, God damn it, this is just one thing that no one's ever explained. And it happened in this book too because it's amazing. And much like Ant-Man and Wasp, it's an amazing thing. But I'm always like, if she can't, she's constantly phasing, why the fuck is she not just falling through the earth constantly?
Because Kitty's floating. She's actually too light to fall through the earth.
Never mind. You know what? Claremont, once again, better than the writers and Ant-Man and Wasp.
Yep, Claremont thinks that shit through. No, she's literally a ghost because she can't touch the floor. I mean, if she tried, she would go right through it. But she mostly just hovers above it and actually spends a lot of time in a containment unit that is trying to turn off her phase power.
You are completely right. I had completely I went to you said that, and I was like, why is she not falling to the floor? And I'll be admitted, I've read that story once. It's amazing. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Also, it has one of my absolute favorite all-time Wolverine moments.
Ooh, I like Wolverine.
You are a Wolverine fan. Yeah. There is a moment. So, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I've read it, I don't think the X-Men and X-Factor actually come face-to-face in the crossover. They might later. But early on, X-Factor's already been through the Morlock tunnels. Wolverine goes through after them. He picks up the scent of Jean Grey. He realizes that Jean is still alive, and he doesn't tell anyone because he wants to keep that to him, for him, as long as possible. He still loves her. He still wants her. He wants a part of her to be his, just his, for as long as possible. It's selfish, obviously, but it's an incredibly human moment for Wolverine.
Yeah, Claremont and Miller, and are always the best, and especially Claremont, of course, the old Rose and all that stuff. But capturing that core Wolverine of like the relatable, selfish guy who. Scenes like that, scenes of like, you know, Jean in bed and him throwing away the bouquet of flowers, so he's talking to Scott. Little moments like that always stick out of, you know, Wolverine is a flawed but relatably flawed person who, I mean, it's very clear to see, even today in X Swords, why he has basically become in the weirdest way, the moral compass and the heart of the X-Men in ways that I don't think anyone, I mean, crap, back in the 80s and 90s, when this character was first making the real name, I don't think anyone really thought, yeah, this is a guy. This is a guy that's going to be like the moral compass.
He's going to be the face of the X-Men forever.
Yeah.
Actually, you and I were kind of talking off mic a little bit. We were talking a little bit about stuff we read. I finally read the Immortal She-Hulk issue, and there's a great exchange between Jennifer and Logan at a bar, of course, because Jennifer is finally facing her mortality. She's died 3 times now, and she's like, how do you do it? How do you face life having died? And the first person she talks to about it is fucking Wolverine, because of course she does. And it's an incredibly intimate and special moment that I was absolutely floored by. Of course, it's written by Al Ewing, so it'd be a shock if it was less than perfect. But I mean, it fucking nails it. And of course, it just puts that special spotlight on. Wolverine is a character that superheroes go to be like, how do you do this? Yeah. It's astonishing. And again, to see just an echo of that reflected all the way back in 1980, I think, for the Mutant Massacre is just, again, it's all right there.
You just pointed out something that made me laugh a bit too much, because I was thinking about recent stuff in that first meeting of Solemn Wolverine, where he's like, Rocco's unbeatable mutant and Krakoa is unkillable. It's like, Wolverine's actually been killed several times at this point. I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, he's, like I said, he's actually probably died less than Jean Grey, but in some form or fashion have died or been thought dead more than most.
Oh, yeah. Jean holds the record, but Wolverine's a close second, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I don't know. If we're including X of Swords, Kid Omega's coming quickly up there.
Yeah, Quentin is racking them up because it's hilarious and fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had to go classic, and I'm going to stay classic for a minute, but I want to hear your number 3 before I do.
My number 3, I think it will be. You had Hoxpox in our honorable mention, so this will be the newest of the actual list, and so it's completely reverse of classical. But this was a story that is everything to me. I mentioned Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson because they are some of my favorite writers currently, and even though this is the weird event in the sense of it is done closer in style of Age of Apocalypse than anything else, because it did not overtake current issues, but instead relabeled them as new issues for Age of X-Man. Which, Age of X-Man, I adore. I think it dives into aspects of characters we would have never thought to see. For those who haven't read it, it is essentially, much like Age of Apocalypse, it is a universe where X-Man has essentially had his way. The X-Men are... the X-Men and everyone has won. It's this beautiful, peaceful place, but it also takes it into a level of mutants aren't something that hides anymore. They're very celebrated. It's very like 80s socialist communist Russia kind of era of ideas.
Plus, nobody can bone.
Yeah, no one can bone. No one. It takes, again, it's the reverse of the typical idea of the reverse of art, the reverse of freedom, but in a safe way. And it takes it to the super extreme that you don't necessarily expect. It's fun. It's well written. It focuses on characters you don't normally see. It combines a lot of different influences that you don't normally see and hadn't seen X-Men for a long time. And also, part of why this is on here is this, to me, is the lone shining beacon of hope for a long, dark period of X books. This was, for a very, very long time, the X books were in such a state that it was sad to be an X fan for a long time.
It was almost physically painful to read X-Men comics from basically, and I know people are going to shit on me on this, post-Bendis. I'm not going to count Bendis because I think the Bendis run is actually way underappreciated. Yeah. But post-Bendis, post-Secret Wars, through Hoxpox, there was almost no shining light. You had X-Men Red. You had certain issues of Astonishing X-Men. You had 6 issues of Cable, and you had Age of X-Men. And I do mean you had Age of X-Men because, man, I tried. I could not get into it.
No, that's fair. I think it is a very, very, very specific story in a very, very specific way. But when you name those lists, those are even you not enjoying it, those are also the only books I would say is even worth revisiting for a 5-year period of the X-Men, which is just extremely sad. And it was the last story before Hoxpox, and it was at least went out on a good note and led to an even better note. I am very happy Thompson and Nadler got their story, because it is weird how after that it seems like Marvel still doesn't really know what to do with them, which is bizarre because they're selling independent books left and right to movie companies. I know Undone by Blood just got bought by somebody.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they're releasing great work after great work, and I don't know why Marvel didn't hop on them. Especially, I will never understand why they were not in any of the Hickman books, and still aren't. I mean, they are great writers. And again, Gary Duggan's great, but I don't know why they were not brought on for this new Cable story.
Yeah, I can actually get behind that. I was shocked at how much I like Gary Duggan's Cable. I did not expect to, and I like Gary Duggan. I think I'm a bigger Gary Duggan fan than you are.
Oh, yeah.
But I was shocked that his Cable book was as good as it is, and even I would be like, I would rather see what Thompson and Nadler would do with this character and this aspect of the world. I do not think they got a fair shake on Cable, even though they did get their Age of X-Men crossover out of it.
The way Age of X-Men was put out was so just literally, hey, we have 5 months to fill. You pitch this idea, fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Because there has been no mention since, before, after, any time of. We haven't even seen Nate in this entire world of the current Hickman X-Men, which is bizarre.
Does Nate have precognitive powers? I feel like he might. That might be part of his telepathic power set.
Maybe,
which would explain why we haven't seen him, because Moira's, keeping a lid on all the precogs.
But it's also, that's the only thing I keep on hinting and hoping that he's going to play some big, because there are, we keep mentioning it, there's 3 or 4, especially Nate Gray and Legion. The fact that they are just went from being a constant member of the X-Men universe, at least talked about or in the background, and the fact that
also being such an important part of the Uncanny X-Men run that led into Age of X-Men,
and with Cable playing a big part in this, with Professor X getting a new top billing star in the X-Men again, with all this going on, it is weird that again we haven't heard Professor X once mention, "Where's my son?" We have a whole house of Cyclops, minus Nate Gray, which is, Rachel Summers.
They brought back fucking Gabriel Summers.
Yeah.
And X-Man is still, missing.
So I think there has to be something to it, because both those characters, Legion and X-Men, are very Omega level, very high power. And again, knowing Hickman, I at this point, I can't think it's just an oversight.
I can almost guarantee you one of Legion's personalities is a precog, and that's why that shut down.
Well, even then, the precogs will have to play a bigger part eventually because of... even now we have little things like Taro in the other island popping up.
Right, that's true. Oh, shit, you're right. I totally forgot Taro. That's literally her powers.
Yeah.
Some form of precognition. Oh, my God.
I wouldn't be surprised if Exoswords maybe, and especially now that we're dealing with Apocalypse and his kids, and you're telling me we're not going to get some... Nate
Xavier
Gray,
kids, yeah,
and Nate Gray and Legion showing up. I don't think they would be in the 10, but I also don't. I wouldn't put it past them to be somewhere nearer in the future than we give credit for.
That's a really fair assumption, man.
And with I think Age of X-Men explored such an interesting version of the character, because essentially the character became a new Messiah figure that he had been, but to the nth degree of him becoming basically the unofficial leader of the X-Men, taking him to this Charles Manson meets Jared Leto status in the book.
Oh, of course, that's the comparison you would go with. I love you for that. I love that that's the comparison you went with, but still.
Yeah.
I find it pretty goddamn hilarious.
Yeah, no, and I love Age of X-Men. There's not a ton. It's the most recent one. It's pretty lengthy because there was a lot of side stories, and there were 5 or 6 series, and each had like 8 issues or something.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I kind of gave up on it was a monster, and I was trying to keep up with it on Marvel Unlimited as they were hitting Marvel Unlimited, and I eventually just kind of tapped out.
Yeah.
But it works for the audience that it was made for, and I do absolutely appreciate it for that. I love that you love it.
It's one of the ones I'll say, because I don't even know at this point. I need to look it up. I don't even know if they have an official trade. I think they have trades of each individual series, but I don't know if they have a trade of just like Age of X-Men and all the stories, which is a bummer because I don't really necessarily want to buy like 8 trades.
Mm-hmm. But no, I was honestly. At one point, I was just waiting for the omnibus. I figured they had to do an omnibus of it, and no such thing has been announced. Yeah. We've already got our War of the Realms omnibus apparently coming out later this month, but no Age of X-Men omnibus. So I don't know what the fuck Marvel's doing. I would not be surprised if they kind of bury it, and that is a goddamn shame.
It is, but alas, hopefully that won't happen. What is your number 3?
My number 2.
Oh, yeah, number 2. That's right. What's number 2?
We're cruising through this list.
We are.
My number 2 is the one that breaks my own rule.
Oh.
For when I initially did my list way back in the day, I would not allow myself to put this crossover, quote unquote, thematic crossover, I think would be an easy way to say it, on that list because it does not have the issue to issue crossover continuity that I so made myself demand of a crossover. But I think the story is so strong, and it's some of my all-time favorite issues of Uncanny. I had to put it at number 2, Fall of the Mutants.
Yeah, see, I mentioned it earlier. I think that works as an event. It
does. It's because it's a thematic crossover, and that once again, horrible thing. The thematic crossover is death.
Yeah.
In New Mutants is when you get, Doug Ramsey dies, and that's the first time the New Mutants have really had to deal with one of their own, a young man struck down, murdered, for no real reason that they can fathom. You have the literal embodiment of death in the resurrected Warren Worthington becoming Apocalypse's, death.
Yep.
And then the X-Men fucking die. They're immediately resurrected by Roma, but they sacrifice themselves to stop a literal demon from destroying the world. And I think that's some of Claremont's best writing. I think it's some of the best work he's done building a subplot into the ultimate plot and making an event out of the story. How it raises Forge from a minor character to an important character. What Storm does as the leader of the X-Men in those issues. How the X-Factor manages to band together and bring Warren back. How the New Mutants have to deal with the post-traumatic stress of watching Doug Ramsey die. It's really heavy, mature comics and mature themes for the X titles, and it's not like we haven't dealt with that before. Like I said, we previously had the Mutant Massacre, but I feel like thematically everything ties together really well, and it made the X universe feel really cohesive in a way that I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, no, it's another classic great one. It is up there with a lot. Like I would say, Fall of Mutants. Honestly, the only one you didn't mention, I thought maybe on there was Extinction Agenda.
I have some problems with this Extinction Agenda, almost entirely related to the art, but also, Extinction Agenda, mainly I feel like there are some crossed wires between the writers, because I feel like nobody was exactly on the same page vis-a-vis what was supposed to be happening in Genosha and what was supposed to be happening with Cameron Hodge. Claremont had a very specific idea of what was going on. I feel like Louise Simonson had a very specific idea of what was going on, and she and Claremont were really good friends, so New Mutants and X-Men pretty much on the same page. X-Factor, I don't know what the fuck is happening over there, and it's a goddamn mess, and not in a good way. So that kind of breaks Extinction Agenda for me.
Fair, that's fair. In my head, like Fall of Mutants, Mutant Massacre, and Extinction Agenda. I guess because in my head they have a couple of similar themes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's
Totally.
more. But yeah, no, Fall Mutants is great. It is another bona fide classic.
Absolutely. If you haven't read it, weirdly, of all the ones we're talking about, the big one I would be like, if you have not read The Fall of the Mutants, try to hunt it down, read it on Marvel Unlimited, give it a shot. All of these are worth reading, but that's the one that I feel like is going to have the least amount of audience exposure.
Yeah.
Please hunt it down.
I don't know if it's still on sale, but I know for a while on Comixology they had a big X-Men crossover sale, and it was on there, so it might still be. I don't know, because Comixology is always odd on how long. Some of their sales last forever, and some last like a day. So
yeah. Those free Black Panther issues went on for like nearly a month. I was shocked.
There's been a few like that, so hopefully it'll continue that way. Anyway, I'm on number 2. We've already talked about it. But I'm going for the whole trilogy, the Messiah trilogy, so Messiah War, Messiah Complex, and Second Coming.
Nice.
So a lot of what you already said about Complex, but just take to another level, because I love Second Coming. I know it might be the most controversial one, because War is like extremely crossover of the books that it did. I think it was X-Force, Cable. A lot like the B Team books, to be honest. B Team, C Team.
It did not have the Uncanny X-Men spine crossover, which is why I've never personally considered it. Though I will say, Messiah War is a tremendous amount of fun. Yeah. I have to reread Second Coming, because when Second Coming was coming out, I really strongly disliked it. Mostly because I felt like they killed Nightcrawler in a way that I did not find satisfactory.
Yes, sir.
And it had way too many one-off tie-ins that I think kind of weighted down the story. So I need to go back and just read the main Second Coming event story.
I would say do that, because I don't even know if I've read. I love Second Coming, and I don't even know if I've read like the one-offs. I know I've read the main spine and the main like series and spin-offs, but I don't think I've read like the weird one-shots that came out of it. Either way, for those who don't know, we talked about Complex. This just kind of continues the story from that. Continues Hope becoming more and more herself, Cable becoming more the father figure and becoming more of her protector while they're being hunted through time, and then going, of course, coming back to the modern day where Hope, again, the Jesus allegory is pretty on the nose, but I also
it's up there with Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
as you know, Anakin's Jesus. The end.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing about Hope is she's I'm glad that right now her place in X-Men has kind of reflected this one, where she's literally in charge of resurrections. So it does have almost an interesting bookend of her coming to save all of mutant kind, successfully pretty much saving them from this crosshairs of different enemies all coming together to end them forever. And then now coming back to where she's what saves them yet again. Just through a very interesting, semi-convoluted system. But it works in the book it's in.
Yeah, I kind of love that her part of the Five is almost more symbolic. I mean, yes, she makes all their powers work better, because that's kind of what she does. She mimics and amplifies powers. But she's basically there as this is the role she was supposed to have anyway. Yeah. We just need these others because Hickman likes doing things with charts.
Yep. Yeah, in fairness, she's essentially super rogue. She can gain and control powers just by being around it. She's been able to turn off powers, turn on powers, like I said, amplify them, take them over to them even better, and also she's been trained by Cable.
Sync could do over in Generation X, but he's not at the level that Hope is, and also not as recognizable a character, even though you got to assume he's running around Krakoa somewhere. They definitely would have resurrected his ass.
And again, trained by Cable, so she's an extremely apt fighter, extremely apt at guns, at firepower, at swordplay. She is a definitely just like all around badass character. But now, over the years, I love her relationship with Cable, how she has been able to really. And looking back, I think that's why the Kid Cable thing rubs me the wrong way a little bit, because we're like, we've never got to see Cable like this. Like we kind of have, and with Hope.
Yeah, we gender flipped it. Yeah,
Hope was young Cable, growing up very similar, but just, with a father that didn't really want to be a father, know how to be a father, but became, you mentioned earlier, an incredible father.
I have a weird, completely off-topic question for you.
Yes.
Literally apropos of nothing, but I feel like if anybody could answer this, you could. I was thinking it would be interesting to see Hope in a relationship, boy or girl, and then I kind of realized, do you think Hope is asexual?
She had a relationship in, I think the Cable before Second Coming.
Okay.
She had a relationship with I want to say with the boy for a little bit.
Okay.
And they've kind of hinted a couple times at possible stuff, but they haven't. They never went back to that. That poor kid.
Yeah.
I can't remember what happened. He may have been killed by Bishop. Now that I say that. There's a high
that
chance
makes sense.
there's a high chance he was killed by Bishop, but they ran away because he was trying to kill him.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting because she is such a powerful character. What they would do, and the X-Men have gotten so far away from the romantic relationships. I think it's time we kind of get back to some of that.
You got Cable dating all 5 Cuckoos.
Yeah,
which is
we're seeing
honestly fun and funny.
We're seeing a little of that, and you also have Kid Omega dating one. So you've got
kind of on the sly, yeah.
Yeah. Because I can't remember which one Kid Omega is dating, but one of them.
It's not Esme, it's not Celeste. I can't remember for sure. Either, but it's a cute little love triangle that has 7 angles.
Yeah, no, I really dig that. I really do. So really quick before we get to our number ones. I think
let's be fair, our number 1 is the same one. I can guarantee it. But please, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, since it's the same one, what we might do before we get there, do you have any events that you think are the worst events?
I was totally going to ask you that question.
Oh, nice.
You read my goddamn mind. I was going to be like, before we do our number 1, what was your least favorite? And honestly, and a lot of people, I've read a lot of Claremont scholarship recently, which is actually is becoming a thing, and I fucking love it, which is, again, kind of make me want to go back and reevaluate the event. But when I read it at the time, I fucking loathed Inferno.
I thought that maybe we were going to. So that is a very polarizing event because I have heard people completely adore it. I've heard people that completely hate it, and I don't hear much in the middle.
No, I'll give it credit for introducing Mr. Sinister. I'll give it credit for doing something with Madeline Pryor after her basically, I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. Brass tacks. Madeline Pryor was basically raped by editorial. No, and over Chris Claremont's strenuous objections. At least he tried to do something with her and her story that made sense in the context of what happened to her character. But Inferno's a goddamn mess. It's a line-wide event. It didn't need to be. It has too many elements and too many bad guys. I will say it reads a lot better when you read the New Mutants issues that were involved as well, which I initially missed out on when I made my first read-through. Yeah. But another thing about it was a very, intended purpose of Inferno was to make X-Men the Dark Series mature book and Excalibur the lighthearted, fun, jokey book. And you spend a lot of Inferno with the X-Men as these dark avatars of themselves and being like, we're tainted, we're evil now, we're so, there's no going back, we're so corrupted. After Inferno's over, that is never referenced again. Yep. But, again, like I said, a lot of Claremont scholars have a lot of parallels to draw between Inferno and the original Dark Phoenix saga, which I have recently reread. And I feel like I need to give it another shake. But from my memory, I am not a fan of Inferno. How about you? What is your least favorite X crossover?
I think I like Inferno, but I'm a sucker for any sort. It's like X-Men in Hell. So
right. Plus Sinister, and you're a huge Sinister booster. I can't argue that. I mean, if you like Inferno, I definitely cannot argue with you on that.
I'm going to go for a tie because there's 2 ones that I think ruined an interesting premise and just weren't good at all. Also, speaking of Ultimate Universe, we're excluding Ultimatum, even though it involved X-Men characters, because obviously that's probably the worst event in comics. Period.
Ever. Yeah.
So mine's a tie between Curse of the Mutants and Age of X.
Ooh. I feel like you're being a little overly harsh on Age of X. Please elucidate.
I don't like it. I don't know why. It does nothing in that series works for me, and I think I typically love books that are Age of. But nothing that works, and then Curse of Mutants is again another one. It's like, hey, this could have been with the right writer, probably fun.
Yeah, the actively hint that Blade is going to join the X-Men, and then it never happens because I don't know. Victor Gischler was just the most wrong-headed choice to write an X title possibly ever. It sucks, and it destroyed Jubilee. And I think we've established on a previous episode, and maybe be worth it to reestablish it now. Jubilee is like a top 10 X-Man for me. I fucking adore Jubilee, and it broke her for a long
time. Yeah. And again, I don't know if I mentioned on air, so I'll keep it off air. But like my personal idea of how to save the character of Blade, like you mentioned, it kind of deals with playing with that idea. So for me personally, it really fucked that over.
Just kind of shit on your own personal, like your pitch. That's always a bummer. The reason I feel like you're being overly harsh on Age of X is just like Age of X is such a nothing event. It was such a
I think that's part of it too, though.
Nonsense, nothing. You know,
the fact that it was like pitched as this big event, and it has a name like Age of X, which sounds like it's going to be this. It
was made to be a direct reference to the other ages that we dealt with. Yeah.
And I just don't. I think the fact that it's so just nothing, and the fact that you get a couple of interesting characters, and it also came out at a time where, and also you had Olivia Copiel doing art, which is like on a lot of it, which is kind of the fact that doesn't get a better story is annoying. I think like even on covers, it's like the covers are great, the pitch work is great.
That was Ariel Olivetti on the covers, right?
Well, I think I always forget his name. Olivia Copiel, the dude that does a lot of current stuff too.
Yeah, well, Olivia Copiel did the Brian Wood X-Men first 3 issues.
Yeah, I know.
Which were beautiful, and then
he did
were terrible because Brian Wood is terrible.
That Age of X cover, that like the one I always think of, where it's them like standing in rubble in like the gray background and the like the brownish gray background and.
Right, I think that was the cover of the trade.
That could have been.
Yeah.
Either way, it's
fair.
It's just such, like I said, the fact that I'm trying so hard, I don't even think of import. I remember Mutant Protesters. I remember the fact that I can't remember most of it is what bugs me.
Right.
So I'm trying, like Inferno again. Most things I can be like, oh, X-Men as vampires, X-Men in Hell, X-Men fighting Phoenix, X-Men fighting Apocalypse, X-Men fighting X-Man, like. There's at least like a core elevator. This is a core idea. This one is just like an X-Men event.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. X-Men do things that are important. It also, again, it came out 2011. It was that time period where a lot of cool shit was happening, but it
was the beginning of the end of Mike Carey being interesting on the X-Men.
Yeah.
Because leading up to it, Mike Carey was like had just this astonishingly kick-ass run. He did the Supernovas arc, which led into the events that led into Messiah Complex, then turned the book over into X-Men Legacies, which focused on first Professor Xavier and then Gambit, and then Age of X happened, and it kind of started getting weird and boring. And then he tried to do X-Men Legacies again with Rogue, and it just didn't work. And then Cy Spurrier ended up taking it over and doing the Legion stuff that everybody really likes that I haven't read, but I am looking at the omnibus of right now. It was the end of the crest, and the start of the fall of the Mike Carey run. That's for goddamn sure.
I mean, it's also the problem is this is one of the few times where a lot of the side books were way more interesting than that main X book, because this is around the time you have the beginning of Wolverine and the X-Men, you have the beginning of Uncanny X-Force. You have the beginning of all the stuff that would go on to be what I consider some of the best X stories ever written, and the fact that this was kind of the setup, lead-in, or just ignoring those. It's like it became such a, again, it's just a nothing event. It's so hard to tell, like, the effects of Age of X it happened.
Yeah, that's exactly
it.
True.
And I look at
that's totally fair.
Yeah, for me, an event, I want something that is either so good, it's so bookended and great, or it was like it redefined the genre. This didn't either. Just kind of like even Curse Mutants, like it sucks the effects it had, but at least it did have long lasting effects. At least it felt important.
Yeah.
This is like if you read every X book ever, but just skip Age of X, I don't think you'll even notice.
You've missed nothing. You have missed nothing.
Anyway,
so Colby, why is Age of Apocalypse your number one?
I mean, I think it is. I think in events, I think it is for me personally probably the best event, because it not only do you have it creating this whole new world and taking everything we love about the X-Men and have it just flipping on its head, creating a new art aesthetic, creating a new world, creating some characters that were minor are now major, some characters that were good are now bad. It makes you go on a trip that I don't think anyone expected, and it does the unthinkable of it gave this continually second act book feel like it for a moment had a third act and had a sequel. Mm-hmm. And something that I don't think a lot of books can pull off. When I think about events, it is like it's up there with Infinity Gauntlet, it's up there with Nightfall and things like that, where just to me it like this is one of those singular events in the series. If you look back, it was such a defining event. It would set up the status quo for what an X event was, and also for better and worse, and what the X world multi-reality version, the multi-universe of the X-Men would look like. And plus, it just...
And what an event could do.
Yeah.
Because after that was when you started getting stuff like the Clone Saga, which, irreparably fucked the Spider-Man universe for a long time, but was a direct response to Age of Apocalypse. One thing that really stands out to me the more I think about it, why and of course, if our listeners haven't put it together yet, Age of Apocalypse is, of course, my number one as well. One thing that stands out to me the more I think about it is what an amazing job it did of reflecting the characters that we know in the traditional X-Men Marvel 616 universe through their counterparts. For all that Cyclops was raised by Mr. Sinister, raised to be a prelate, raised to be a bad guy, he is still a good person. He still rescues mutants when he can. He still subverts the system. Same thing with Warren Worthington. Tries to play aloof, tries to be above it all, can't help but be a hero at the end. Faithless, atheist Nightcrawler can't help but end up saving people and victims in need. Havoc, so overcome by jealousy of his brother that ultimately it destroys him. Something that has never happened in the X-Men universe, but could absolutely happen and is a part of Havoc's character. Beast, given unfettered access to science, becoming a villain. We're literally seeing that play out in Hoxpox right now.
I was going to say, my current theory up with the few things I mentioned about the precogs, I would not be shocked if Beast basically becomes Dark Beast at some point.
Right. Well, also, we had the White Beast from Morrison's run doing the same thing with Kick. Anytime Beast is given basically free reign, dude decides to do some pretty shady shit in the name of science. That's a continuing thing, but it started here. Wolverine's love for Jean Grey
that Weapon
surpasses
Omega?
the ages.
Yeah, Weapon Omega. That's what I was about to say. Like, that character arc of him and Jean is great. The how he handles getting love, how he handles not getting love eventually. And it's not official, but honestly, even the David Lapham Age of Apocalypse stuff that would come for some reason in like 2013 or 2012, whenever that came out.
Yeah, it was like a 10th anniversary thing they were trying to do.
Whatever, even that had such good ideas in it, and I still love that too. I'm also a David Lapham fan, so that's
right.
50-50. But either way, the main stuff.
Colossus being such an incredibly selfish kid. Kitty being so incredibly savage. All of these are parts of their characters that we've seen hints and glimmers of in our universe, and again, put in this new world, seeing what parts of those characters grew and changed and matured and were nurtured.
And also, we haven't mentioned the most obvious one of the death of Professor X affecting Magneto to take up his legacy and just become like this version of Magneto that is trying so hard to do what Professor X wanted to, but also seeing in this universe it completely failing in a lot of ways.
Magneto being a relentlessly selfless hero in the face of adversity Professor Xavier never had to face.
So many interesting takes on like Sabretooth and Blink, and you had stuff. I mean, X-Man, Nate Gray really becoming Nate Gray in a lot of ways. You had there's so much. Not only just the art aesthetic, like becoming this powerhouse of like giving these great designs to all these characters that people.
Oh, Quicksilver's costume in Amazing X-Men is one of my favorite Quicksilver designs of all time. And it's such a simple retooling of his costume, but it's like, how did people not do this long ago?
So many, like, they're so great at so many of them. It is the most 90s book of it. It's that 90s style, but it's also almost the yang to Jim Lee's yin of X-Men, where this is like Jim Lee had this great positive look of the X-Men. This is the reverse. That's the beginning of the 90s, this bright optimism. The end of you can get Age of Apocalypse. You get towards the mid. You get towards this disillusion. You get towards this darker times. You get the rise of everything else, and it reflects it so well. And even the villains, I think the idea of giving the X-Men an end boss in Apocalypse, giving them like this ultimate big bad that was always in almost this anime level of, if they could just get to this very end, if they could somehow figure out how to beat him, this could all be over. Having then tying it to actual old school X-Men continuity with the M-Con Crystal being allowed to run rampant because because this universe, Jean Grey was never taken by the Phoenix Force. Therefore, the Phoenix Force was never used to heal the M-Con Crystal. So this universe literally has a death sentence because of old continuity. Is such a comic book thing. Yep.
But you also didn't need to have read Dark Phoenix Saga for this to have an effect, because it's covered so well in one of the ancillary titles in Gambit and the Externals.
Yeah.
It's given such a well told, well done side story that you can get the point of, well, even if they beat the anime level boss, they're still fucked because this cosmic thing that is completely beyond their control is going to destroy them anyway. And stakes like you've never seen.
Yeah, new villain stuff like Sugar Man, which is a character that shouldn't work.
No,
should not work.
And admittedly, a lot of people hate Sugar Man. I kind of love him.
I love Sugar Man. I'll tell you right now,
he's goddamn ridiculous.
If Hickman brings Sugar Man back, you'll see the biggest pop ever from me.
I will not lie. I'm right there next to you, man. You and me. We're going to be the two people in the crowd.
If he is one, and this is also one of the things why I'm loving X Swords, he could 100% be one of the chosen enemies to have the swords on the tin on that side. Mm-hmm. And especially with their ties to Apocalypse, it would not be the most shocking thing in the world.
That's true.
Especially with that'd be so much fun. Yeah, especially with some of the weird stuff they're pulling from in X-Men history. I mean, where this event's already dealing with, Rise of Apocalypse, it's dealing with 80s Excalibur, it's dealing with, the fact that we're doing, and that's why I think I'm loving X of Swords tied back to modern continuity, is X of Swords, in a weird way, even though they've had, spiritual sequels to Age of Apocalypse, and Age of X-Men in a lot of ways is kind of the inverse, this Age of Apocalypse and X of Swords feel like they have so much in common in the weirdest ways. And I'm enjoying the hell out of it, and I'm really hoping that they can stick the landing. Because Age of Apocalypse also, to me, has one of the most satisfying conclusions to an event. And that's correct. That's a very hard thing to pull off. There are very few events that, when you're talking about events that pull off a conclusion, most people remember the second act, the climax, or these big moments. You have Infinity Gauntlet and Age of Apocalypse that I can really go to, and I would put maybe Metal up there with this had a conclusion that ended it, felt satisfactory, and was pushed it forward. Because so many times we get stuff like Nightfall, which is Nightfall, everyone remembers the breaking the back. Everyone remembers Asbat. Very few people remember that went on for a long-ass time.
Yeah, another year and a half or something, because you had a whole year of Azrael as Batman, and then you had Batman take the mantle back, and then you had Prodigal, because even though Batman took the mantle back, he still wasn't mentally prepared to be Batman, so Dick was Batman for a while.
Although, I love Final Crisis, but a lot of people hate that ending.
I love Final Crisis, too.
So I can't. But anyway,
and I do want to say X-Men Prime, which was the follow-up to X-Men Omega, which was the ending of the Age of Apocalypse. I feel like Prime drops the ball a little bit, but you don't have to read Prime to appreciate the end of the Age of Apocalypse, which is also X-Men Omega.
We haven't mentioned, it was also a product of the time where something like this just can't happen more because of how people read comics, which is this took over every major X book for a little over a full year. Yeah, for a long time, and the ramifications were felt for a very long time. Like, again,
Marvel tried to do that with Secret Wars and nearly destroyed the company.
Yeah, because I think they learned quickly. It's one thing to do with the part of your brand. It's another thing to try to do every single, and also with an event that no one, even though that event, admittedly, for Hickman fans and people like that, was, people love that event in a lot of ways. However, it
has its supporters, I'll say.
Yeah. It's I think the only event I can think of. That's a dumb question, but what is an event that you can think of that just has no supporters, that you have never met anyone that enjoys it? I have one.
You're going to say Axis, aren't you?
I'm not, but that's a good choice.
I don't know a single person who walked out of Axis being like, that was a quality crossover that I enjoyed.
It killed Rick Remender's career at Marvel. Like, editorial him, one of the best writers writing today refuses to work because of what they made him do on that event and that series. So I can't ever support that.
Right. So what were you going to say?
Civil War 2.
Oh, yeah. That's like the 1-2 punch of these comics are shit. Interesting sidebar, though. Al Ewing has to deal with the events of Civil War II in Immortal She-Hulk because that was one of the times that she died.
Ah.
And he does it. He really kind of backhands it. It's really kind of interesting because basically what it is Jen is like, Tony Stark couldn't be wrong, so I got to lay there in a bed. If I could have moved, I would have broken his jaw.
Yeah, I won't say it's podcast, but recently what brought up is a friend of mine told me that someone that they know enjoyed Civil War 2, and I was like, that's the only person I've ever heard of that actually enjoyed that. Like, that's a one, because it's comics.
I can't imagine who that person could be. Then again, there is at least one person out there whose favorite Star Wars movie is Attack of the Clones. So, I mean, there is no accounting for taste. Literally, people are gonna like what they like.
But like that, I just say that event because that's the one event where it's just like. Although I guess you could say that about what the fuck I can't. Wow! I bring Rise of Skywalker, where a lot of people. That's one of the weird movies to keep it in the Star Wars universe. Where I don't know if I know anyone that will say that's their favorite Star Wars movie.
My brother won't say it's his favorite, but he did adore it. It's his favorite of the new 3, that's for sure.
That's a weird choice, I'll say.
Yes.
I would personally say that's the worst of 3 options, but
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, hey, like I said, people like what they like, but yeah, Civil War 2 was the only one where I'm like, I just, even when it's coming out, people that normally support Marvel were like, what is this?
I mean, it was so obviously a cash grab for the Captain America Civil War movie, and it
that was also
it was too heavily reliant on the Inhumans because of that was what Marvel was pushing.
Actually, we could maybe put Inhumans versus X-Men up there. In like events, I don't know anyone that has ever heard that said, "Oh yeah, that was good."
Yeah, most people are like, "Wait, that was a thing." Like for something that was like supposed to be, we're fixing the X-Men finally. This is our big X-Men fixing event. Yeah. Most people haven't even heard of it. Those that have, like you and I, think it is utter shit.
It had a great beginning and then it just went to fuck. Is Black Vortex.
I don't know if I'd give it a great beginning.
There were a few of those that had that, where it's like...
Black Vortex, I think, has some really fun ideas that nobody knew what to do with. Like, nobody could agree on how long the Black Vortex powers were supposed to stick around.
True.
Because supposedly the idea was once the mirror was broken, the vortex was broken, powers would start reverting again. And I think some of that happened with... Gamora, but it never happened with Angel until they literally had to cut off his wings in extermination because he can't go back to the past with fire wings.
Yep. So this is kind of above the world X-Men, since we're kind of near the end here. Well, what is your personal favorite event? Period.
Oh, probably. Either Age of Apocalypse or Infinity Gauntlet, and I'm going to have to tip my cap to Infinity Gauntlet because I honestly have fonder memories of discovering it as opposed to Age of Apocalypse, which is like I was reading X-Men comics, and then X-Men comics became this, and it was neat.
Yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet was really one of my first exposures to the wider world of Marvel.
See, it's funny because Age of Apocalypse would be probably tied. Yeah, it would be similar to me. It would probably tied, but then. Mine's probably a recent one, but it is super specific because mine is honestly it's probably Age of Apocalypse and Milk Wars, but Milk Wars is literally designed for me and like 7 other people like me. So
I'd have to put War of Kings really high up there.
You do, yeah. Well, you mentioned War of Kings quite a bit. War of Kings, right? I love, of course, like Final Crisis again. I do.
Final Crisis would be in my top 5.
Seven Soldiers, Morrison Seven Soldiers is amazing, and again, also love metal and currently death metal and X of Swords. It should be noted that X of Swords and death metal right now are 2 books that are coming out right now that both of them would probably be in my top 5 of events period, and they could both drop the ball big time. So I'm too hesitant to say that. However, I trust the creatives on there, and I'm not shocked to say it because X-Men. It's weird for as many events as X-Men has. It was kind of hard once you look at the vast amount. There is a lot of noise before you get to like, okay, these are like the 10 that really matter, and then whittle it down to these are my favorites or what I think are the best. Like I think
actually, I have a weird question for you. This is going to be my final because I just saw something on my shelf that reminded me. Speaking of maligned events, what is a traditionally maligned comic event? It doesn't have to be X-Men, just traditionally maligned comic event that you actually kind of dig.
Ooh, that's a. I'll try to go for. Let me think for a minute because I already mentioned Final Crisis, but I feel like that's got a kind of a critical reevaluation through the years.
It has. Can I go ahead? I'll do mine while you're thinking. Because mine is the Our Worlds at War crossover that happened literally just before 9/11 to the point where they had an Aftermath issue that shipped. It was either the week or the week after 9/11 happened, which showed a completely destroyed Metropolis that was so similar to what had happened in New York that DC made the issue fully returnable. If retailers were just too uncomfortable carrying it. It's a big goddamn mess. It's a Jeff Loeb, helmed Superman event, and I love it, man. It's my kind of giant, sloppy, messy pizza with all the toppings. It's fun. Kind of the same way we were talking about Onslaught. It's goofy, terrible fun. And I like it. I enjoy it. I unabashedly, unreservedly like it.
That's an interesting question. There's a couple, because it's not like the line, because Brightest Days, when I think a lot of people just don't give a shit about either way. I like that.
Brightest Days is actually really strong. I think it's better than it has any right to be, is what I would say.
Yeah, especially for a 1-2 punch like that. But let me try to think of one that I just really, that like a lot of people just fucking hate. I'm sure I know there is one. If I can, that's a really good question. That's a interesting.
Fine, don't you just love Identity Crisis or something? Come on, man.
Oh man, I'm trying to think. No Identity Crisis. I'm only trying to think of what's an era. I'm trying to think of an era of comics that I really liked that a lot of people hated. I see a lot of my problem is it's like similar ideas with like I don't hate Flashpoint like a lot of people, but I also think it's mostly because I enjoy the overall idea. And it's also been like almost retcon because all the ideas have been explored better in other books and movies later on.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. What about something like Original Sin? What's your take on that? Brings Angela into the Thor universe.
Angela. That's all I know about it. That's the only issue. I didn't read all of it except because I read the first. I read the first issue, the Angela Little Bee tie-in, and that. I wish I could say I liked Axis, but I definitely don't. I know. See, I can speak for other people. I know Daniel loves Secret Empire.
Oh yeah, that's right. He does, and I don't understand that at all.
There's that. There's. Hang on a minute. I'm going to cheat really quick, and I'm going to take a quick stroll to my bookshelves and see if that will help me at least jog my memory. That's my problem.
Literally, the reason I asked was I looked up and I was like, "Oh yeah, that Our Worlds at War collection that I have that literally no one else would own but me."
Yeah, no, that's fair. Because there's a couple of those that are like, "Wow, yeah, that's made for 17 people. You're one of the 17."
Yep.
Let me see what we got here. God, I'm looking at the shelves and here is like all 4 or 5 Age of Apocalypse books. I mentioned it. I don't. That's a lead-in. I don't hate Avengers X Sanction. and that it's utter shit, but I don't hate it.
That's true. That's actually a pretty good pick.
What else we got on this shelf here that can go into that territory? That might have to be it because, dude, oh no, people like that one. That I'm gonna say just because it's not known doesn't fucking count. Because I'm gonna say some of the Star Wars ones, but again, that's not.
No, I'm sorry, you can't say Vader Down. Vader Down's awesome.
I was gonna say Screaming Citadel, but that Vader Down's also great.
Yeah.
Vader Down is, goddamn, this is a problem. This is a weird thing to say, because events typically seem like they have one of two ways to go, and it does either end up being like, this is amazing, or fuck, that was shit.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, man, I'm not as qualified for this question, I fear, right now. I hate to say it, but looking around, I either just love or hate too much stuff, depending on which way I'm answering that question right now.
That's fair. I'm glad. I'm glad that you like the stuff you like, man. I can't knock that.
Yeah, no, now it's really bumming me out. There's a lot of like big stories I love that people fucking hate, but events I don't know. Like there's a lot of like, yeah, see, it's not even an event, but like stuff that's like treated like an event. A lot of like the Dark Knight 2s and 3s and.
Mm-hmm. That's actually okay. I would give that to you. If you can, if there's like if you were to say Dark Knight Strikes Again, I would give that to you.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
I know a lot of people actually came back on board for Dark Knight 3, but I feel like Dark Knight 2 is pretty universally reviled. Yeah, I appreciate it, but I have grown to appreciate it, and also I have literally shown you the reason why I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, you are very, and it's been proven several times where the colors in that book fucked it over, like
yep.
Majorly, because James Harvey and a few other people who I follow that have done like recolorings. I think I even sent you one not too long ago. That's like, that changes the book to be 1,000,000 times more pleasing in almost every way.
Yep, absolutely.
You know what? One that I think people just forget about this recent Witching Hour I liked, but it seemed like no one even cared about that except me.
Oh no, I will absolutely give that to you because I tried, and yeah, Witching Hour is Age of X for me. It so completely fell out of my brain. I don't even care about it. So that is another one. That or Dark Knight Strikes Again. I will give you either one of those as being incredibly perfect answers.
Because I think some I like are like ones that everyone's like, yeah, shit, but it's fun. Like Batman, Spawn. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think it's good, but it's right. Oh, where did it go? Is it Body Count? The Bisley, Raphael, and
that's not an event book though. That was just like a miniseries.
It's so weird. I don't know what the fuck that thing was.
Casey Jones, Raphael, Kevin Eastman, Simon Bisley, Body Count. Yeah,
it was just a weird book. Like I don't know what that was supposed to be. I don't know because like it doesn't have a reflection of any of the other Turtles books.
I think it was Kevin Eastman just doing a heavy metal tryout, honestly. I
guess, because that one is one of the ones I don't even know. Yeah, I do not know what to call that book because it is so fucking bizarre. Like that, yeah. I own the hardcover of that book, and every time I pick it up or read it, it's just like, what is this?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see if I can get the hardcover eventually, just because I need it for my turtle collection. Yeah, because I particularly want it.
Well, I love Bisley. And I love that art, but man, it is just fucking bizarre. It's I don't know how people feel about it. Batman Max.
Oh, that's finally finishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll give that one to you.
That's I don't know. I don't. This is the problem. I don't generally know. People listen out there. If you like Batman Max, let us know because I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair too. Yeah.
Yeah,
this conversation has gone completely off the rails.
Oh, it had, in traditional fashion, because now I'm just like overly thinking. Cause I'm sure, especially like Batman or Daredevil, there's probably some weird event that I was like, "This is the shit," and people are like, I don't understand it. But in a weird way, I feel like for some reason, culture matched my interest for especially the past couple of years when it comes to comics and the events. And there are definitely haters to stuff I love, but like Metal and a lot of Snyder stuff sold really, really well.
I still can't believe Milk Wars is what it is.
Milk Wars is amazing. Yeah, the fact that Milk Wars existed, that DC was like, hey, Gerard Way, we're going to let you do an event. And he's like, what if I make an event just about how stupid events are and how it's just homogenized art that doesn't matter? Like, yeah, you can make that. Like, okay.
And I'm going to use Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. What was that? Nothing.
I'm going to turn Wonder Woman into a housewife, and going to turn Superman into a milkman, and turn Batman into a priest to just literally nail home that, like, you've turned these once beloved art characters that meant something into just generic things that they once were the opposite of. And we're going to try to take them back and just do really weird, bizarre stories. And also we're going to take shots at Funko Pops and collectibles that Warner Brothers makes. And yeah, I don't know how in the world. The fact that Young Animal exists to begin with is the most bizarre. And I know I love Young Animal to get. It got me into a lot. It's why me and Daniel are friends. It's a lot of shit came from that's great. But looking back at it, the fact that Milk Wars happened and like didn't get the boot. It is up there with Grant Morrison's Action Comics #9 of like, how in the world did you get this allowed to happen?
Yes, absolutely.
That is up there. But yeah, we're way off topic again. It's getting later and later we get, the weirder we get. So I will, before we get too weird, some of the semantics. Again, thank you all so much for following us over to our new home. Thank you for listening to this. Thank you for even checking it out if you're new. Also, we always love hearing what you want to say. We always love hearing what you love too. So in the comments below, if you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment of what is your favorite X-Men? What are your 5 favorite, 10 favorites? What do you love? What do you hate? If you're listening on Spotify, you can always share it, and also you can tag us in it on Twitter. I'm at HellhoundF5.
And I am at Blah Blah Pod.
Yes. If you tag us in there, what's your favorite issues? What are your favorite events? We love talking to you guys, so we will probably like that shit, comment back. We love hearing from you on that. There's a million things we would love to hear from what you would want to see. Do you want more lists like this? Because now that we're doing this again, we're much more free to make lists.
Absolutely. And also, if you want to shoot us a longer missive, we do have an email. It's blahblahpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us there. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/blahblahpodcast. We also take questions and comments and occasionally post stuff on there. We want to talk to you guys. We'd love for y'all to talk to us. Nothing would thrill us more. Normally, I'm saying a lot, and I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Normally, we would take a skip week next week and then head into Respawn. But since we took an unplanned skip week recently, we are just going to straight up do fucking Respawn next time. It's Respawn Volume 10.
Wow, we are getting up there now. We're right on the edge now. It's going to get interesting very soon because I've got very few volumes in paperback left and are about to go over to hardcover. So, our volumes might start getting different than the official listings, but I'm not sure when that happens.
Well, I've got volumes through volume 20, so okay. I'm going to be sticking with those.
I will just follow your lead coming up pretty soon then.
Awesome. That'll make things easier. But yeah, please join us for that. If you haven't been listening to Respawn, you'll find it on the YouTube channel, the Spotify channel, all over the place there. We are doing a critical literary read-through of, at minimum, the first 300 issues of Todd McFarlane's Spawn. Right now, 6 issues at a time. So you can check out that, go back and listen to those, and get ready for our next episode next week. Until then, this has been an absolute blast. I love talking about X-Men. Colby, thank you so much for indulging me in this podcast. And then we will see you all next week for Spawn.
Yeah, 12 Ways to Die. That might be one that people don't like.
Which one is that one?
I believe that is the Anti-Venom introduction.
Yeah, no, you're right. Oh, shit.
I think that's 12 Ways to Die. Either way, I love that story.
Nice.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening.